If you missed it live, catch the podcast on kaya959.co.za.
And as we always do on a Wednesday, this is where we talk all things to do with entrepreneurship. And tonight specifically, we thought we'd shift things around, right? Because we always talk about access to capital, access to markets, making sure that you receive the right mentorship in order to support your business as well as its growth. But what we often take for granted is the partners that you are aligned with, whether it's your colleagues and your co-workers or staff that you happen to employ, or maybe as you're lying on your partner's chest, you just decide, babe, let's do this and let's do it together. So the question and response that we're looking to share with you today in terms of guidelines and feedback is how business partners, spouses, married couples, or people within a romantic relationship can make sure that they make their couple dynamic work at work. I'm excited for this conversation, as you can tell, inside your business, talking about working with your partner that you happen to be in a romantic relationship with, and then transitioning that relationship to review the pros and the cons of actually doing business together. In studio, I'm joined by marriage and business coaches, Lyndon as well as Alexis Johnstone, who join us in studio. Such a pleasure to have you both here.
Good evening, Gugu. So excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Lyndon. Alexis, hello to you too, ma'am. Don't be so quiet.
Hello. It's great to be here. I'm just loving the energy and the vibe in the studio. So thanks for having us.
I've been eyeing the both of you out of the studio windows, watching everyone walk past you at reception. And I feel like I've been missing out. So now that I have you all to myself in studio, I'm really excited for this particular conversation.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps that's where we need to set the scene, right? Because the truth is, companionship is what everybody longs for, whether it's in a relationship or through friendship or the colleagues and friendships that we're able to establish. But let's talk about just the general sense regarding couples entering into business together. Some say yes, some say no. What do you say? Is it a maybe? Alexis, Lyndon?
I think it depends. It's not for everyone. I think there needs to be a level of maturity, a real level of understanding of each other. I think if you have a healthy relationship as a couple, then that can translate into the business environment with very clear guidelines and parameters within which to operate.
Yeah.
So that's where I'll start off, but I'm sure Alexis has quite a bit to add to that.
Sure.
So because it's with Lyndon, I'll say absolutely yes. It is so doable. But as you spoke earlier about business, you can't do this without the right investments. So how willing are you to invest in your relationship and to invest in connection?
I'm keen for us to unpack that, right? Because I'm already picking up two key themes that Lyndon and yourself have mentioned: a healthy relationship and, as you say, key investments. And this is obviously where the waters get muddied, and clearly it means that a clear conversation needs to take place from the get-go to establish what is a healthy construct of this relationship. What are the investments we need to make in order to make sure that the connection from a business point of view is actually solid? So what conversations should be taking place?
So to start off with, you have to start with conversation. So often we make assumptions.
Yes.
Right? We make so many assumptions and we don't articulate our expectations. And then you get all miffed, bent out of shape when your expectations aren't met and there's an expectation gap. So just coming back to the baseline of actually having those conversations.
And those conversations also need to be honest, robust, and clear.
It needs to be, and that's, I think, what we miss in society in general today, is the robust conversation, the honest conversation, the transparent one, where we're not afraid to say, this is what I'm experiencing.
Yes.
This is the impact of your actions on me, and how do I now respond to it? What are my triggers? What are her triggers? And so those are the conversations, the hard ones you've got to have up front. A lot of people wait until they've been in a relationship for many years and those things develop. 100%. And now it becomes a crisis. So what we say is that the day you get married, on that wedding day, you make the decision, okay, when we talk about marriage, you make the decision on what you know at that point in time. And the same in a business relationship. What you know about your partner at that point in time, it's only when you enter into the relationship over a period of time that all those other little issues come up and you now have to deal with them.
Exactly.
So those hard conversations must be had up front.
Definitely. And I think you mentioned such a valid point. You're speaking to us here who always believe in potential. It will get better. They'll learn. They'll adapt, right? Because we live in this world filled with so much optimism and not realizing that you can't change people, but rather accept them for who they are and then take it from there as a basis as to whether or not you can continue with this partnership. I do want us to speak to, perhaps there's a couple that's listening right now and they're looking to have those conversations and perhaps might still be struggling in terms of managing the conflict, ironing out the differences, and not compromise is necessary, but not to the point where it takes away from who you are and you don't show up authentically. How does one need to manage this? And perhaps give us some examples. You know, do we need to sit down, draft a contract? This is our business relationship. This is our romantic relationship. But how does one, have to instill these boundaries? And I understand it is tricky because each relationship is unique, really.
Yeah.
It is. So it is about being willing to have the conversation. So yes, it might mean a contract. I mean, for us, we were really clear around what's the purpose of our relationship, our business relationship and our personal or life relationship. What do we want to achieve? What do we want to be known for? What legacy do we want to leave? And I think in turbulent waters, if you think of how the world has fundamentally shifted since 2019, you need that purpose to come back to, right? Because that's what grounds you in the midst of the chaos and the turmoil. You just look back at that and you say, this is why we came into this business relationship. This is why we came into this intimate relationship. So how do we find our way back from there? And another key thing, Gugulethu, is we fear having those conversations, right? Because it's about being vulnerable. You spoke about your authenticity.
Yes.
And then we put it off.
True.
But I'd rather step into the discomfort and have that conversation than not have the conversation and have the discomfort for months, sometimes even years. And then people carry that. They carry that unfulfilled expectations and sometimes even resentment. And it just bleeds into the relationship, both your professional and your personal relationship. So lean into the discomfort.
We should.
You asked a really key question around, should there be a contract? Should there be there? Should there be that? Again, you can't cut the cloth in the same way for everybody.
True.
Depending on the strength, the maturity of your relationship, that will determine what you do. So if, for example, which in our case is a fact on both our businesses, Alexis is the shareholder and I work for her.
Okay.
So there's a
New world of work.
clear distinction between our roles and responsibilities. So I'm operational and she brings the governance, etc., vision from a shareholding perspective.
Yes.
And so we work together. We have our strengths and we allow each other to operate in those areas, not just in business, but in relationship as well, in the home. So it depends. So if it's something where you feel as a couple, you do need to put it on paper, a one-pager where you just highlight, clear up the roles and responsibilities for each one, where you draw the line, okay, and what are the non-negotiables within that relationship, and what are the negotiables.
Got you.
Within that. So those are just a couple of, just the practical thing that you can do is, if it's necessary, draw up that little paper. So when there's conflict, you have that to refer back to as well, that we have agreed on the following.
100%.
But again, I have to stress the level of maturity in the relationship is really, really key. You can have the most amazing two people.
Yes.
But if they are not mature, emotionally mature, conflict will arise as a result of that partnership.
Lyndon, let's talk about this because you're getting to the juicy bits now. I'm even changing my position in my chair because you're very right. This is the reality of it all, right? And what tends to happen in life is that it gets difficult, as you mentioned, Alexis, to lean into those deep and meaningful conversations because perhaps as you start off this business partnership, things go well. The money's coming in. The marketing is taking care of itself. The staff complement is also growing. The knowledge of your business is also successful. But because we continue to sweep issues under the carpet, they just continue to grow. Resentment thrives and anger until it eventually blows up. So I'm keen to hear from the both of you, typical mistakes then that people might make. And I guess communication is one of them. Being clear about your boundaries is one of them. But what you've mentioned in terms of maturity, when those boundaries and non-negotiables are bent, yeah, sometimes we just, but I love him or her tends to get in the way.
At that point, it's not about love.
Oh, Lyndon, surely it should be. Listen to the woman in me, Alexis, hey?
If you want to separate business and personal life, and it cannot be about love. You have to separate as men.
Just love.
It can't just be about love.
Got
yes,
you.
yes.
But love is a prerequisite.
In terms of relationship.
Yeah.
But let's take men, for example. We compartmentalize our lives, right? So our work life, our home life, and our friends.
Got you.
It's all compartmentalized, right? So in the world that we live in today, and especially after COVID,
Yes.
that has all shifted. That's all changed quite dramatically. And so as men, we have to learn to understand that we have to share ourselves completely with everybody within our circle.
Got you.
We can't give this part to this one, that part to the other one. We have to be authentic. We have to be true to who we are in all our relationships. And so as men, we need to really shift our minds around that. That in order to have a healthy relationship and healthy relationships, we need to share all of ourselves and make ourselves completely vulnerable
Yeah.
to potentially be hurt in the process as well. Can happen. But we have to be vulnerable.
And it takes learning
Yeah.
and unlearning.
And that takes time.
It does, because we have to unlearn these autopilot ways that we've become accustomed to in terms of men's roles and women's roles.
Yeah.
And so the key
Yes.
thing for me is about not being rigid.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because as Lyndon was touching on men becoming more vulnerable and being open to it and learning that process, in my mind I also thought about how typically women often continue to take a very submissive role, because perhaps in a romantic relationship that's a natural disposition, right, to be submissive, to be supportive. But perhaps when it comes to the business side of things, you know how to get the capital, you know how to access the networks. How should that dynamic be balanced so that even if there's a different role and function between the business and the interpersonal relationship, that it doesn't bleed and intercept and disrupt the function of the other, and things work in a disharmony, in other words?
Yeah.
So in terms of fluidity, I'd like to say there's a rhythm rather than a balance.
Oh.
The minute you say balance, people have this notion of 50-50. And it's not as clear-cut as 50-50. It can be 80-20, 70-30. So for me, it's about leaning into the rhythm.
Got you.
And again, it's not about that rigidity. It's flowing. It's dancing. So learning to dance with your partner rather than march. Because marching, again, if you think of marching, it's quite strict.
Yeah.
It's,
Static.
Yes,
Military.
static. You can take a misstep and go wrong. Whereas if you dance, if you take a misstep, it's just in the dance, right?
It's a rhythm.
Nobody else knows. You've missed the step.
100%. And I think that's also a very important part that you mentioned, the nobody else. How critical is that in, again, not only the protection of the business relationship, but of course even your interpersonal relationship? Because sometimes it's very easy for staff and colleagues to intervene, or family and loved ones to get involved. And now the waters are muddied because we're not sure if we're talking as CEO and shareholder or, as partners and lovers here.
So a key thing for us is we don't talk business in our bedroom.
Oh, awesome.
That's our safe space.
Okay.
That's your place for intimacy. That's your place for growth.
Yes.
So business doesn't come into our bedroom.
Got you.
So we have a home office. So we discuss business. It's in the office. When we're done, door closes, and we move into the rest part, the other part of our lives.
Got you.
So you have to try. It's not always possible, but you have to be intentional about trying to do that. But a key thing for me is do not take your business into your bedroom. Keep that as your safe space.
Got you. That's
be quite intentional about who you allow to speak into your relationship, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes those family and friends are well-intentioned but are clueless.
Exactly.
And if you just allow them to share their lack of wisdom with you and you get drawn into that, you're setting yourself up for rocky waters or for failure.
At what point, and this is the difficult part, right? Because I love that you've taken us on a journey that it starts with the communication, and the communication entails a number of things, right? Not unplugging, leading into that deep conversation, being vulnerable, opening up yourself to learning and unlearning certain habits, and creating a narrative and I guess an agreement and contract that works for your relationship, for you and your partner, and then navigating that journey as a dance. I have this popular belief that nothing lasts forever, good or bad. And sometimes good things might come to an end, and it might come to a position where individuals and as a couple, you need to choose which takes priority.
Yeah.
That in itself can also muddy the waters even further. That, okay, we'll keep the relationship but not the business partnership, or vice versa. We'll continue building on this profitable entity, but now we're just colleagues. But that in itself can become very blurry. So conflict management and resolution, separating roles, how to identify perhaps when the journey, one or the other, has potentially come to an end.
Well, I think that's also where seeking wise counsel comes in. So you're not a little island on your own. And there are people out there that have walked the walk, that have lived experience that you can tap into to get advice, to get guidance. So don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Is really key for us.
Yeah.
People wait until it's a crisis and then they ask for help. So when you ask for help before the crisis happens, lean into, tap into what is out there and get wise counsel to assist you in a process like that.
And potentially don't frame conflict as something bad.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
tell us more.
Conflict is just conflict. It can unlock amazing growth if you don't frame it as just negative. Because the minute you see it as negative, you want to shy away from it. You don't want to go there.
Guilty as charged.
Aren't we all most of the time?
But if conflict is just something that's going to give you data
Exactly.
and help you grow, it's going to give you insights. And then you take the data and the insights and you say, how do I work with this? What do I do with this? How do I process it? So for us in our marriage relationship, we haven't come to that in business yet, but in our marriage relationship, it's not avoiding conflict.
Yeah.
Really?
It's how do we resolve the conflict?
Got you.
Yeah.
How do we make up after the conflict?
That's the exciting
How
part.
do we repair?
It's a business show, Lyndon.
How do we repair and restore the relationship? Those are key things to think about. So don't avoid conflict.
Yeah.
Lean into it, but lean in a way that leaves your relationship intact. So that you're showing up, as much as you're disagreeing and having different perspectives, you're showing up with deep respect and compassion for your partner.
100%. This is such an important conversation and definitely one that I do want us to build on. But if you have any voice notes, we're giving you a quick opportunity to share them or dial in on 086 000959 or share your voice notes on 063 688 0959. But as you mentioned, it's important to seek counsel.
It is.
And support.
Yeah.
And Lyndon and Alexis, I wish we had a camera here. I can witness the energy between the two of you, how it is that you communicate. You give each other an opportunity to share your views and perspectives. And even when you don't agree, it's done in such a polite manner. It only caught on 3 seconds after that. Hold on. They disagreed, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And you move forward with it. As you speak to young couples, and I can imagine there's a large number of them who come to you for some guidance as well as advice, primarily when it comes to managing their relationships romantically as well as in business. What do you say? Where can we find you? And for anyone who's listening right now, what's the one key takeaway they need to remember?
Okay, so where they can find us is on Instagram, Lyndon and Alexis, Lyndon and Alexis, Alexis. That's our primary platform at this point. So when we started this, we believed let's start on one and then expand as that. First establish a basis of trust with your online followers, and then expand from there. So that's where they can find us. And we share content 4 or 5 times a week, videos, clips, etc. With some nuggets that we share on different aspects. We just did the 5 love languages today, for example.
Oh, stunning.
So, and it cuts across personal and business, because you can take the principles and translate it across and vice versa. So that's where they can find us. But in terms of a key nugget to leave with you, I'm going to leave it to my best half.
Oh, stunning.
So I believe life is short. You hear so much about how much people are dealing with. So make time. Be intentional about carving out those special moments for both your business and your pleasure relationships.
And make memories.
Yes.
Make memories. Life's about memories. At the end of the day, all we have left are memories.
100%.
Let's make them.
Ooh, Lyndon and Alexis, you're getting a call from me later. I have so many questions. Is our generation iffy? Do we give up too quickly? Do we not know what we're looking for? Lyndon nods. He's like,
Lots more to talk about.
Definitely. Oh, thank you so much for bringing a fresh perspective to business conversations that typically happen. And as you make a correct mention of, when we work as entrepreneurs, work in corporate careers, look to build new opportunities with our partners and spouses, it's important that not only do we let them in, and whether or not the business relationship thrives or not, but as you say, the principles of understanding what's important to you, how you show up with maturity, vulnerability, and leaning into the difficult conversation just makes it a better experience in terms of the outcomes you'll have in the end. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Guletu, for having us. It's great to be back home.
Oh, fantastic. We'll be seeing you soon. Definitely. If not on this show, definitely another show.
I look forward to that.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. If you've just caught the tail end of it, where have you been? But you can catch the replay of this particular conversation on our website, kaya959.co.za. It will be available under Kaya Biz Rewinds. My guests this evening were marriage and business coaches, Lyndon and Alexis Johnstone, who've given us some insight as to how, if you happen to be in a beautiful romantic relationship and you're extending it to a business partnership, how to make sure that you maintain a beautiful couple dynamic and make it work even when you are at work.
If you missed it live, catch the podcast on kaya959.co.za.